Hello, and welcome to an all-new unbiased gear review. Today we are doing a pickup shootout for Ormsby guitars. And I have to stress the importance of this. This is a completely unbiased gear review.
Oh, hey man, what's up? Sorry I'm late.
Dude, what? Where'd you get the shirt and the... You've already got your fucking NAM badge?
What?
Alright, so today what we are doing is we are taking some of the handmade pickup options that Ormsby makes as drop-in replacements for their GTR line, or even for their custom line for that matter, and we are going to be giving a side-by-side comparison so that you guys can see what the difference is amongst them.
Enjoy. So the reason that Arnold and I decided to do this was because as multi-scale guitars have started to become more popular, replacement pickup options are typically few and far between. You're either left with soap bar style pickups, EMGs, blockouts, Fishmans. If you end up with passive sets like Kiesel Lithiums or the Ormsby pickups that are in here, it's sort of, hey, I'm stuck with these, or I need to rip them out and send them to Seymour, Duncan, or Bare Knuckle for rewinds.
One of the things that Perry and the Ormsby team has decided to do, though, is they offer several different pickup options so that you don't necessarily need to do that. That way you still have an Ormsby branded pickup that you can drop right into your GTR or your Ormsby Custom if you didn't quite gel with the pickup that it came with. So there's several different options available that all suit a variety of different tastes as far as sound goes, as far as how hot you want it, as far as the magnets that were used.
So what we thought we would do is take two of our Ormsby guitars, my alder body bolt-on and Arnold's mahogany-bodied set neck, play riffs that we each wrote back to back with each set of pickups going from the least hot to the hottest, and compare the slightly different sounds of the guitars and our very different styles of picking and playing to demonstrate how these sound, to give people a better idea of what pickup maybe suits them best if they want a replacement. So the first pickup was the Korean-made PVH pickup from my TX Eaton that has an Alnico 5 magnet wound to about 9K.
And one of the things that we noticed about the PVH is that it drops off right around 100 hertz for the bass roll-off, and it did have a scooped lower mid-range to it too that kind of lends itself to having a slightly more modern tonality to it. But there was a little bit of, I wouldn't even necessarily say like a bump in the upper mid-range, just a presence there in the upper mid. So even though it had the high end and the low end in there, it still had a very present upper mid-range.
Yeah, there were some mids around 1K that you don't typically see in a PAF style pickup. So if you wanted that traditional PAF sound, you'd need to EQ out a little bit of that 1K. But for more modern style playing where mids are not such a terrible thing, it just sits a little bit better in the mix.
Yeah. Out of all the pickups that we tried, this one was easily the most vintage sounding, but it didn't really sound all that vintage. It still had a very modern flavor to it that honestly works well for a lot of rock styles and even some other styles that we normally don't typically play.
Yeah, it's one of those where when you split that pickup, it being lower output, having the Alnico 5 magnet in there, it just shines in that clean, tapped, split range. Just lower output certainly lends itself to that, where you can pick a little bit harder and you're not just driving the input of the amp.
Exactly. The second pickup that we tried was the stock hand-wound Alnico 8 based Nunchucker 8 that came in my SX GTR. The pickup is very similar, both structurally and audibly, to the PVH, with a few major exceptions.
First thing is they actually have different pull pieces on the Nunchucker. So instead of screws, there are slugs. That makes some tonal differences. And instead of the Alnico 5 that the PVH has, they're using an Alnico 8, which, if I remember correctly, is your favorite magnet for pickup.
I love those magnets. Those magnets, they tend to pronounce the bass just a little bit and also give it a little bit more treble bite, which is definitely what we noticed in the Nunchucker 8. Despite the fact that it is still a relatively low output pickup at 9.3K.
Correct.
Yep. It doesn't play like a low output pickup. It plays like something that's much hotter, and it does have just a little bit more treble than the PVH. The PVH dropped off at about 5K hertz, whereas the Nunchucker 8 drops off at 6K. The other major difference, though, too, is that even though the bass rolled off earlier on the Nunchucker 8, there was more of it. So what were the frequencies again?
We saw the PVH started to really roll off at 100 hertz, and on the Nunchucker, you see that start to roll off around 200, but there was a significant bump in that 200 range.
A lot of it.
Which you would definitely notice playing it when you start to play those low-end muted chugs. They're just punch in the face what you expect from an Alnico 8 loaded bridge pickup.
But besides that, the mid-range presence was pretty much the same. It was very, very similar. It's just that because the low end and the high end were just a little bit different, that made all the difference in the world with how these two pickups sounded.
Yeah, very neutral mid-range. It's not a scooped old-school metal sound. It's not a modern, bare-knuckle kind of pushed mid-range, quacky, genty kind of thing.
Yep. So now we get to gush a little bit over what was our favorite pickup of the experience, which was the Hot Rock.
So the Hot Rock is the first totally handmade pickup that we got to put in, installed it in the TX Eaton. Like the Nunchucker, it has an Alnico 8 wound hotter, so we're sitting a little bit over 13K. So there are some similar tonal characteristics to the Nunchucker, but just really punched through more.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that low-end emphasis in the 200 range like we did the Nunchucker. Similar drop-off. This feels a little bit tighter for whatever reason. It has, instead of the upper mid-range emphasis, this had a bit of a bump in the 500 range. So if you like some of that low-end punch, which probably is one of the reasons we like this, is you start to hammer on those open low-note chugs. It's just got that good punch you in the chest without being woofy low-end.
It also had a bit of a boost around the 5K hertz range, so that it had a really, really present treble, but it also dropped off pretty sharply around the 5K hertz range too. So even though there was a lot of treble, it wasn't super shrill.
Yeah, it's not that ice-picky high end that you worry about with high gain. It's just that right amount to give you some of those sparkly cleans, if you like those, or just a little bit of that necessary fizz in a high gain mix so that you don't lose the guitar.
So the really only point of reference that we can find that's kind of close is the Seymour Duncan Alternative 8, which for years has been my favorite pickup. However, this thing does have some differences to it. The Hot Rock is wound just a little bit less, so it's not quite as compressed, so you get a little bit more dynamics from it. It's also, being that it's not wound as hot, it does have a little bit less low end than the Alternative 8 does, which in the context of what we were doing and also in the context of the mix that you heard in the demo song worked really, really well.
Yeah, the Hot Rock just seems like that perfect, inspiring, as soon as you play, it punches you, but it's not something that you're going to have to carve out a bunch of excess low end in a mix. It's just, we love this pickup.
Oh man, dude, as soon as we installed this, we just kept passing the guitar back and forth like, can you believe this? I know, right? It was so awesome, so inspiring. We just couldn't stop jamming on it, even though we had more pickups to do.
Yeah, workflow came to a complete stop, and we had to end up doing the last pickup a totally different day.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't want to stop playing the guitar once we got the Hot Rock installed.
True story. So now we are moving on to the very aptly named Master Blaster, because that's kind of definitely what it sounded like. Mr. Chad, what's it good for?
If you are a fan of the DiMarzio X2N, so you're perhaps an old school Death fan, and you love Chuck's sound, this is the pickup for you.
Yep. Or even going into like some old school thrash stuff, guys that used to use the X2N back in the day, or guys that maybe used to use like Lawrence 500 XLs, for example. like certain Mr. Dimebag Darrell, you get kind of a similar tone from this thing.
Yes.
There's definitely a low-end drop-off at about the 200 range, which was similar to the Nunchucker and the Hot Rock, but this one had more of a scooped mid-range, and right around 7 kilohertz, it starts to drop off with the treble. Now, you already noticed that it's a higher treble output than the other pickups that we checked out. Here's what's funny, though. It started to drop off at 7 kilohertz, and then it just kind of slowly tapered off. So even at the very, very front end of the spectrum, there was still some treble that was coming out. It was hilarious.
Yeah, in the parametric EQ, which we have screenshots of, there's still 17 kilohertz, and it's
It's still registering.
Yeah.
Wow.
And this is very much when people talk about, I don't like ceramic magnets, this pickup sort of shows that. It's wound hot. Mm-hmm. It's over 15K, and it has all of those things that when people talk about not liking ceramic, this sort of has all of those.
Yeah. It serves a purpose. I mean, if you're into like that old school metal tone where there's not a whole lot of cleans and you're just kind of going for it and you're getting a lot more of the distortion from the pickup as opposed to from the front end of your amp, it's actually a great pickup for that. But for guys like us where we prefer to get more of our oomph and our distortion from the amp, not necessarily the best for our application.
And this isn't what we expected.
Yeah.
We were both sort of fighting over who was going to end up getting to keep the Master Blaster at the end of this, because we're eternally 13 years old inside, and you think, hey, I want to be the guy who gets the super hot pickup, and we thought this is going to be the metal pickup. And we weren't thrilled playing this at any point.
But one of the cool things that has come out of this, though, is talking to Perry about the next video. He is going to be providing us with some more pickups for another pickup comparison.
Katana.
And one of the other things that he has also suggested is doing a magnet swap in that thing to put in an Alnico 8 and see if that tames the high end and gives it a little bit of a low end boost to make it sound more metal.
Yeah, this was just a little bit thin, which was surprising to us given the extra wines on there. Mm-hmm. So I'm typically a ceramic guy. I thought this was going to be my pickup. I'm really curious to see if for this particular pickup, an Alnico 8 just puts it right in my wheelhouse.
Fingers crossed. All right. So today we are drinking Darkest Hour Imperial Stout from Anchorage Brewing Company in Anchorage, Alaska. This is, even though it says Imperial Stout, it says it's an ale. Does that look like a fucking ale to you?
It's dark as
Holy shit. That looks like a goddamn oil slick. All right. Oh, geez. Molasses is very pungent in the aroma. Ooh, very boozy.
Yeah, it's
very boozy, very roasted malt.
I expected it to punch you in the face a little bit more because it smells pungent.
Yeah. Very smoky. This is definitely something you could probably pair with like a really good steak.
Yeah, smoky is a good term for it. Like you're better at this than me, but like there's some maltiness in there.
Uh-huh. I really like that.
Yeah. I thought this was going to be worse. And this is 19%?
13% ABV.
We're going to get fucked up.
Yep. We're going to get fucked up. This is why we're doing this at the end of the video now.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Perry.
Thank you. Go for it. So the reason why we did this...
Oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.